Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inner Ear Secrets. I'm Audra.
I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are thrilled to bring you an exciting episode today where we have a special guest. Please welcome Patrick Bowers.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
So good. Yep. Always
so
good.
We are so excited to have you on. You are our second guest
very
so
special.
far. Patrick Bowers is an audiologist and associate lecturer at the Department of Audiology and Speech Pathology at the University of Melbourne. He leads the practical program in the Master of Clinical Audiology. His clinical research interests are in pediatric audiology, including prevention and diagnosis of hearing loss in childhood, teleaudiology, and educational progress. He also has a keen interest in clinical education research in the fields of digital learning tools, communication, and feedback. So Patrick, does that cover it?
I think so. Sounds like a bit of a mouthful when you say it like that, but yeah.
I'm not going to say I copied that straight off You'll Find an
I was
Expert
say it
thing
sounded a bit
on
familiar.
the UniMel website.
So, I mean, I know you all very well from our interactions in the practical program, but I guess some of that other research stuff you mentioned might be a bit new to you.
Yeah. So we'll just start off with a simple question. Can you tell us why you chose to pursue audiology and why you continued researching?
Well, in terms of the first part of that question, so why I chose audiology was I was always interested in doing something that would help others. So healthcare was very attractive as a field to go into. But I didn't really connect with a lot of the other healthcare professions that were on offer when I was deciding on what to do, except when I found out about audiology, which I didn't know about for a long time. When I found out about it, I thought that that would be a really cool combination of being able to help people to communicate well with one another, but also the tech side as well is pretty attractive, being into tech and music and that sort of thing as well. I also do have a friend that has a hearing loss, and they have spent all of their life seeing audiologists. So talking to them about their journey with their hearing over time sort of reinforced the fact that it's a profession that I could make a bit of a contribution to. I'm guessing that you maybe were in the same boat in terms of knowing about audiology growing up, unless you have a personal connection. It's not a profession that is so well known, potentially. Yeah, that was why I pursued audiology. And then I guess I wasn't at that time intending to go into research. I was intending to be a clinical audiologist, but the research side of things came into play when I was hired at the university and had part of my role being a research assistant. So going on from there, I sort of found that that was also another area that you could contribute in. Just like the clinical work, you can make a bit of a difference or contribute on that front. You can also do that just in a complete different capacity.
Just a quick question. What did you do in undergrad?
My undergrad was a Bachelor of Science, and my major was a lot of human biology. But it ended up being somewhat similar to a biomed degree, but I had a lot more choice by doing just science. Yeah.
Similar to me and Audra's background then. We also did human structure and function.
Yeah. But I didn't want to work in a lab. Yeah. Did you? No, I guess not.
No.
No.
Patrick, we see that your published research shares common themes around digital transformation, accessibility, and pediatrics. What made you decide that you wanted to do research around this space?
I guess a couple of things. I am a pediatric audiologist, so that's why my interest in pediatric audiology research stemmed from. Seeing from my clinical activities and what I'm interested in that realm, what were the areas that could be researched on that front. The other aspects, I suppose, in accessibility and using digital technology like teleaudiology came about from being involved with a research project that has been looking at how can we support pediatric population, particularly remote populations, in being able to access hearing care. Because it's so important that our kids and the next generation are able to communicate well in a classroom setting. I suppose also that there's that bit of a personal connection for me coming from the country myself and knowing that there is a limited amount of health services in that sort of context, and that people from the country may have to travel quite a long distance to be able to access something like a hearing test. And so if we can make diagnostic audiology services more widespread by using technology, we can access more children in schools or in kindergarten who are unable to get hearing tests otherwise, and that might lead to them being able to hear better day to day. So that is some of the research that I've been involved with up to date.
So I guess that leads on to our next question. What does your current research and PhD entail?
So currently, I'm spending a lot more of my time focusing on educational-based research. My PhD is really looking at an educational research project. I'm looking at how we might be able to better support students in their communication skill development throughout their studies and how AI might have a role in that. My PhD is really investigating how AI in the form of, say, virtual patients could help students to better their communication skills. Could that potentially mean that students are able to practice their patient-directed communication instead of being in a practical or a placement, but through a computer, basically, without needing to rely on another human present. So what's currently happening, it's a very fast-moving space, of course, with ChatGPT blowing up just short of 2 years ago. So there's a lot of exciting things to be investigated, I suppose, on that front.
So I can see that you're, at least from the sounds of it, pro AI and using these tools in order to help people. Do you find that there's, or at least in what you found so far, are there any drawbacks in using AI?
I suppose it's really what AI tool are you using and for what purpose? There have been, through some of my research, some concerns raised, of course, quite validly and quite fairly in terms of what's happening with data that is being used to create things or put into generative AI engines. Where is that data coming from? And there's a whole lot of ethical considerations around this space, which is totally valid. And we should be really carefully thinking about what we're doing. There's a bit of an element around AI of things are happening so quickly and moving so fast, but we should be considering what we want to actually happen and taking that kind of approach. So I'm certainly pro AI, but I think there's also considerations, right?
Yeah.
What do you all think?
At least I can understand the ethical considerations in using AI as a tool of getting people's permissions and using those as tools to train AI. I think there's a lot in that, like a lot happening in that space right now. Instagram and Meta, what they're doing to small artists and using their artwork to train AI. There's a bit more work to be done in that space around what kind of policy and legislation there is. At least in my experience in using AI and looking at audiology, I've definitely dabbled in using AI. I've got this type of hearing loss, I've got this type of patient, put in the entire case history and it'll spit out. These are things you can do. What kind of recommendation? So using that as a tool for finding a more creative solution, there is a space for that. And I think if we use it carefully, there may be a lot of benefit. Sabrina, what do you think?
I found AI especially helpful with practicing for our clinical exams. So when I ask it to be a patient, a simulated patient, it can actually give me a real case, like a real patient, give me instant feedback as well. So I think if we use it carefully, as I just said, in an educational sense, it can actually benefit us in our learning journey.
I guess that leads us to the next question. Apart from your own research projects, is there anyone in the audiology field that is doing exciting things?
One of my colleagues, Julian Zanin, is doing some pretty interesting research into imaging. So ways that MRI imaging could be used to better assist with diagnosis of the more maybe niche or not really easily diagnosed types of hearing losses. Things that are more neural basis, like auditory neuropathy, for instance. There's a lot of interesting findings that he's looking into about how we can better see what's happening in the internal auditory canal. So that's past the hearing organ itself, going more up to the brain, looking at the neural pathways, and that some new applications of different imaging techniques might be able to pick up on things that are happening better than, say, a standard MRI could. So I find that is quite interesting and could really potentially improve our diagnostic capabilities to see maybe there's a hearing loss that someone is experiencing. It's not showing up on our standard tests or the tests that we standardly use as audiologists or as, throat specialists maybe don't really give the full picture as to what that individual is experiencing in terms of their hearing troubles, that their results might appear to not really match up with their lived experience. But maybe these imaging techniques can fill that gap and make the picture a bit more full in terms of what's truly going on.
Do you think these imaging techniques will be something that audiologists could potentially perform in the future as well?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it would still require probably the oversight of an ear, nose, and throat specialist to manage that side of things and order the testing. Who knows what's going to be the scope of audiologists in the future? Whether we would have more of a role in any of that, I'm not sure. But at least at this point, I would think it would maybe assist more medical specialists like an ear, nose, and throat specialist to figure that out. Yeah.
You've mentioned Julian is someone that we should be looking out for. Who are some of the people that you've been able to work with?
In terms of my research so far, I've done a lot of collaboration or a lot of work with Kelly Graydon. Alongside Kelly, I've also worked with Gary Rant, and they've been really great mentors in terms of the research side of things and being able to work on a range of different projects over a period of time. They're two established researchers and have a lot of great advice and great experience. I suppose Gary in particular has been researching for quite a long time and was really driving a lot of the initial research around auditory neuropathy and test techniques to be able to assess what's happening with neural firing and things like that. There are some people that I've been able to work alongside and collaborate with so far.
Lots of exciting things happening.
Yeah.
And for people that are interested in research, like me, I myself, I'm actually quite interested in research. What advice would you give to anyone who's interested in concurrently performing research as well as clinical or teaching opportunities?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's a few pieces of advice that I could offer. I suppose if you are trying to start off with research, finding your passion is quite important because research is really quite difficult unless you are passionate about it. So finding something that is interesting to you and is also an area that could do with more research and more evidence base would be really one piece of advice I would give. The other piece of advice I would give is if you are trying to do research and clinical work and teaching or like a combination of one or two things, is you've got to be quite good with your organizational skills, I would say, and quite adaptable to wear those different hats, go from those different modes of work because they can be different in terms of what that day looks like. Yeah.
Would you say the biggest difference is between being in the clinic, doing research, and also teaching?
I guess it is that those roles are very different. Clinical work is a bit more the same thing, potentially from a day-to-day. You are going through that routine of seeing patients and doing the clinical-based activities that you would do on a day-to-day basis. And you are getting that interaction with your patients as well. And it's really face-to-face. Whereas research, for instance, that could be a full day of you sitting at a desk writing a paper or editing a paper or working through data analysis. Or maybe it's actually, depending on your research, you out collecting data in the field. Maybe you are performing clinical assessments as well. If you are doing clinical-based audiology research, you might be seeing participants, writing up some results, collecting data. So there's a difference between those two. And then when we go to teaching, that's obviously a whole other thing as well. So you already know part of what that teaching would involve, of course, from your experience. Maybe it is giving a lecture or we're doing a prac together or we're doing another activity with students or in a group. Or maybe it is also, again, preparing the materials for those sorts of learning activities. So there's a lot of different tasks that you might be doing across those three realms.
Which one would you say is your most favorite to do? And which one's your least?
I don't think I can pick a
Oh.
favorite child. That's basically what you're asking me to do right now, right? I'm going to decline to answer that one.
Okay. So maybe I'll ask you something else. What does your day-to-day look like? Like your Monday to Friday?
Okay, my Monday to Friday, I mean, if we're talking during semester, it's
Hmm?
different to outside of semester. I feel like some
Ah.
students sometimes have the impression that when they're on break, I'm also on break, which is not the case. If you're not here and we're not teaching you, I'm still working. I'm still preparing things, but I will have a break here and there. Don't worry. Across the week, there's a range of different tasks I'll be doing. Part of my week is working on my research, working on my PhD. And so that is, at the moment, writing up some results of a study I've just completed and trying to prepare some manuscripts for papers. Other days of the week, I'll be involved in lecturing and then preparing things around that as well, like preparing lecture material, preparing assessments and marking assessments. That's obviously involved as well. Running the practical program, that takes up a fair chunk of time as well. It's hard to sort of summarize everything you do in the work week.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot though. I feel like we students only see you maybe once or twice a week. And then we're like, oh, they're probably just teaching. We don't really think about what you're doing. We're just like, why aren't they replying to our emails? That kind of thing. But like, you are doing things.
Yeah, don't worry. I want to reply to emails as soon as possible, but we are busy. We're not
Yeah.
just, I think it's funny as a student. I was like, oh, there's my lecturer. And then the rest of the week, you don't really think about what they're doing until you see them the next week in the lecture. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes as an educator and a lecturer that we're certainly not sitting there twiddling our thumbs and just chatting while we're not lecturing you or teaching you in class.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for answering our questions. I think we've got a good range in there, learning about your research and what your day-to-day looks like as well.
Happy to be here.
All right. Before we end the interview, it wouldn't be an Inner Ear Secrets episode without some fun. So, Patrick, we've got some rapid fire this and that questions. Are you ready to answer them?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so Patrick, VRA or play?
VRA.
Okay. Controversial, but okay. So VRA is for younger children. So we're looking at about 9 months to about 2.5 years old. And basically, we get them to sit there and we'll play some sounds and we'll reward them with cartoons or a puppet. And then for the older kids, we put the headphones on them and we get separate ear information. So we call that play. And basically, we play with them. We'll play the sound and then they'll respond by either putting a peg on board or throwing a dinosaur in the bin. So that's how we know that they've heard the sound.
I find it interesting that Patrick has
Yeah.
VRA.
I mean, it's just so much fun to just say, there's Bluey. Bluey pops up and doing a good dance and can be good vibes, right?
Pegboards or dinosaurs?
Come on, there's no question it's dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
Okay. Next one. Beachside walk or hiking?
Oh, that's tricky. But I'm going to say beachside walk. Love the beach.
I agree.
Insert earphones or headphones?
Headphones.
Okay. All right. Movies or TV shows?
That is also a very hard one. If you'd asked me this a few years ago, it would have been all TV shows. But actually, I'm in a movies phase at the moment. So I'm going to say movies.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie is probably Scream. The OG Scream.
Really?
What?
That's the only horror movie I've ever seen. It was for Year 10 Media. We had to watch Scream.
Could you cope with it? It's not.
No. I
no.
actually jumped when there was jump scares.
Okay. Yeah, I'm into horror. So Scream is probably it.
Wow. Okay. I can't relate, but okay. All right, next one. Malleus, incus, or stapes?
Oof. I'm going to say Stapes. It's cool shape.
Mm.
Cool shape. Very cool shape. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I prefer the Malleus. It's giving like heavy. It's got a good weight to it.
They're all in good shape. I'll give them that. The Stapes is so unique.
Mm. For our listeners that don't know, these are the bones in our ears, and they're very small. So I don't know how much weight there is.
Yeah, we should check that out.
Compared to each other, maybe there's a difference.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably find out the different weights.
We'll put it on
Sure.
Instagram for everybody. So, Patrick, sweet or savory?
I am a big sweet tooth.
Are you?
Do you have a favorite dessert?
Oh, gelato is it for me. I love gelato sorbet.
Okay. I wouldn't have seen this
Yeah.
coming. I feel like I've been blindsided a little bit. Is it more like a brain food type of thing, or is it I just enjoy
I don't
this?
know. I just love it. Like I love savory food as well, but just like a little sweet treat. Can't go past it.
All right, next question. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, 100%.
I mean, we're in Melbourne, so it has to be coffee.
How many cups a day?
2. Yeah.
2 cups a day. I feel like that's quite balanced. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I've heard up to 8 for some people.
I feel like I could easily end up in that situation, but I'm trying to consciously stick to my 2. I could do 1, but 2 is the preferred.
Good choice. All right, last one. Radio or podcast?
Come on, that's not even a question. It's got to be podcast, right?
That was a correct and the incorrect answer there.
Yeah.
There was.
It's a trick question, that one. And I didn't fall for it.
It was. So that's all we have time for today, everyone. And thank you, Patrick, for joining us. If anyone happens to have any questions or would like to discuss anything further about things we've mentioned today, what is the best way to contact you?
So you could connect with me on LinkedIn. So that's just my name, Patrick Bowers, on LinkedIn. I do have also formerly known as Twitter, now X, an X account, which is Patrick Bowers AU. So either of those would probably be a good place to get in touch.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We hope to see you around for our next episode where we break down an audiology general appointment. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Inner Ear Secrets Pod, and you can find us on YouTube if you're not already listening on there. Thanks for tuning in, and take care of your hearing and keep listening.